Today, we're diving into a landmark Indian Supreme Court case that really changed the game for marital rights. It's the incredible story of one woman, Deoki Panjhiyara, whose personal fight for support ended up creating a legal shield for so many others. So think about this for a second. At the very heart of this whole legal drama is one powerful question. Can a husband, when he's asked to provide financial support, just pull out a document and say, hey, our marriage never counted, and just erase his wife's rights? Well, this entire case hangs on that very idea.
All right, let's meet the two people at the center of this storm. You've got Deoki Panjhiyara, the wife, and Shashi Bhushan Narayan Azad, the husband. And what started out as a pretty standard request for financial support was about to take a turn that, well, nobody saw coming.
So the timeline kicks off simply enough. Deoki and Shashi get married in 2006. A couple years later, in early 2008, a trial court says, okay, Deoki gets interim maintenance. A few months after that, a higher court agrees. Everything seems totally straightforward, just standard procedure. But then came the twist.
And this is where the story just explodes. The husband, Shashi, doesn't just challenge the maintenance order, he drops a bombshell. He claims his marriage to Deoki was completely void from day one, because, he alleges, she was already married to someone else. We're talking about a claim of bigamy.
And he brought what he claimed was his proof, a marriage certificate. This document, supposedly issued under the Special Marriage Act and dated all the way back in 2003, a full 3 years before he married Deoki, was meant to prove she had a prior existing marriage. So this really sets up the core conflict, right? On one side, you have the husband saying, look, this certificate is undeniable proof, our marriage is legally non-existent, so I don't owe her anything. But on the other side, Deoki is firmly and consistently denying it. She's saying, I have never been married before and I have serious questions about where this document even came from. The battle gets more intense and it makes its way up to the High Court of Jharkhand. And what the High Court decided next, well, it was an absolutely devastating blow for Deoki Panjhiyara.
0. That's it. The High Court actually sided with the husband. They ruled that the 2003 certificate was in fact conclusive proof. And with that, they declared the 2006 marriage null and void and completely stripped Deoki of her right to maintenance. Just like that, her marriage, her financial support, gone.
But Deoki didn't give up. She took her case to the Supreme Court. And her appeal raised a much deeper, more important question. Let's forget about the certificate for just a minute. The real issue here was about process. Can you really use a maintenance hearing, which is what's known as a collateral proceeding, to get something as fundamental as a marriage nullified? Or does that kind of life-changing decision need its own proper legal process? And this is where the Supreme Court does something brilliant. They completely reframe the entire case. They pivot. It's not just about what the husband was claiming anymore, it was about how he was trying to prove it. The focus suddenly shifted from the alleged fact of a prior marriage to the correct legal procedure for challenging a current one. You see, the court made this incredibly crucial distinction. In past cases where a second marriage was called void, the first marriage was always an undisputed fact. Everyone agreed it happened. But here was the key difference. Deoki fiercely disputed the allegation. This wasn't a settled fact at all. It was a contentious claim, and that changes everything. And the Supreme Court's logic here was just crystal clear. They basically said that when a supposed prior marriage is disputed, you can't just accept a piece of paper in a maintenance hearing as the final word. Without a formal official decree of nullity from a proper court, the law has to assume that the current marriage is valid. So what this ruling did was build a brand new safeguard. It laid out a mandatory procedure for these kinds of cases. If you're going to accuse your spouse of already being married and they deny it, the burden is now on you, the accuser, to go to a proper matrimonial court and get a formal decree of nullity. Your allegation alone is simply not enough.
And this perfectly captures the core principle of the ruling, the idea that has become its legacy. Until a marriage is formally and properly declared null by a competent court, a wife remains a wife, especially when it comes to her rights under protective laws like the Domestic Violence Act.
So what was the final outcome after all this? The Supreme Court completely overturned the High Court's decision. They set that order aside and restored the original trial court's ruling. Deoki Panjhiyara's right to receive her maintenance was reinstated. Justice was served. This wasn't just a win for one woman. It was so much bigger. It was a victory that created a lasting legacy. This ruling became a really critical shield for women's rights in India.
basically preventing a very dangerous legal shortcut from being used.
So let's just break down the impact here. This judgment protects women from having their maintenance rights just yanked away based on an unproven claim. It puts the burden of proof squarely on the shoulders of the person making the accusation. And crucially, it says that a huge decision about someone's marital status has to be made in the right place, a matrimonial court, not as a side argument in a maintenance hearing. It basically closes a loophole that could be used to dodge financial responsibility.
And that leads us with a final thought to chew on. The Deoki Panjhiyara case is such a powerful reminder that when it comes to justice, procedure isn't just a boring technicality. Sometimes the how, the process, the fairness, the proper forum is actually more important than the what. It's the very structure that makes sure a claim isn't just made, but that it's justly proven.